Hey Muffin, grab your blanket. It's the sleepover, where faith gets cozy and the tea is holy. Welcome back. I'm so happy you're here, whether it's your first time tuning in or you were here for episode 1. You already know this is our space, so go ahead, grab your blanket. I don't know, light a candle, just get comfortable. We're getting into something that hits deep. Learning to love your own company and finding peace in the quiet. This one's for you if you've been in your alone season and maybe just didn't realize that it's actually a season of becoming. We live in the most connected generation in history, and yet most of us feel more disconnected than ever. We can DM, text, FaceTime, make phone calls. A lot of us post every moment of our lives and still feel completely unseen. Literally, everyone is a tap away. You can talk to somebody across the world quicker than you can walk across the room. Everybody's accessible, but not everybody is present. You have constant communication, but very, very little connection. We have followers, but not always friends. We have people watching our lives, but not walking with us through them. That's why solitude feels so foreign to us, because we've been conditioned to believe that silence means something is wrong, that being alone means we've been abandoned. In a world that keeps us constantly surrounded by people and by noise, we sometimes forget how to be alone and actually enjoy it. It's not that being alone is the problem, it's that we've gotten so used to external noise that silence feels unfamiliar. Solitude isn't about being alone, though. It's about being with God without distractions. And isolation is the counterfeit version of that. Isolation drains you while solitude develops you. I want you to remember that. Tonight, we're talking about something that doesn't always get the love it deserves. Learning to date yourself. What it means to enjoy your own company, to stop waiting for someone else to make life feel full, and to actually fall in love with the version of you that God is still shaping. I want to cover how it is to feel content with being alone, what the Bible says about loving yourself, and also just some practical ways to grow in solitude. Because before you can date someone else, you have to know what it's like to date you. For me, embracing solitude has always felt very natural. I've I've always enjoyed my own company and the quiet moments with God. Honestly, what I've experienced, though, I know that not everybody experiences it that way, and that's okay. Part of what I want to do tonight is to show you how solitude can be a sacred and fulfilling space, and just give you ways to lean into it and enjoy it, and even teach yourselves to see it as a gift rather than a gap. I hope that tonight it'll show you that this is a place to grow and reflect. Solitude isn't about being alone or waiting for someone else to make you feel complete. It's about learning to rest in who you are and whose you are. Muffin, I'm going to ask, when was the last time you actually took yourself out? No distractions, no phone, just you and your thoughts. I know for me, it was about 2 weeks ago. Um, but I do want you to take a moment to think about that. If it's been a while, that's perfectly fine. We're going to unpack why this is so important though. Learning to be fully present with yourself doesn't happen overnight. It isn't even always comfortable at first. But it's in that space that God begins to meet you in new ways. So I do want to talk about how solitude sometimes begins. Um, Sometimes when God calls you into solitude, people start leaving your life and it hurts. And you're probably like, well, God, why did it have to end like that? Or why did it have to hurt like that? Why did it have to feel like betrayal? You know, why did it have to hurt me? Why did they have to hurt me? And you want to be mature about it, but instead you're replaying conversations over and over and over, and you're overthinking and you're analyzing every detail. And you're probably even asking yourself, well, did I do something wrong? Why would they treat me like that? After everything I poured into them? And God is probably telling you because you wouldn't let them go. You are loyal. You are the kind of person who holds on to people too long after their season in your life has expired. You see potential. You see their heart. You see who they could be. And God says that's the problem. You see who they could be and not who they are in that season right there. You would have never let them go on your own. And this isn't to say it's because you're weak, but it's because you're loyal. So sometimes God has to make the separation painful. Not to hurt you, but to free you. Because if it wasn't painful, you'd try to fix it. You try to save it. You try to fight for the connection that God already cut. And then you're wondering, well, God, why don't they just move on? Why do they have to hurt me on their way out? And God says, because if they left gently, you'd chase them. You're not losing people, you're losing access to distractions. And listen, God knows where you're going. And let me tell you, they don't have the prayer life to go with you. They don't have the discipline to grow with you. They don't have the spiritual maturity to stand with you. Where God is taking you requires kingdom vision, and some people are clouding that. While you're trying to gain people, you're not trying to gain purpose. If they stayed, it would have cost you your clarity. So he let that relationship hurt. So the disconnection could stick. Because if the separation wasn't painful, you would have ignored God's instructions. And sometimes God closes a door so loudly that even your heart cannot go back. And that brings me to something Jesus said in John. It's John 15:2. Let's read it. John 15:2 says, "Every branch in me that does not produce fruit, he removes. And he prunes every branch that produces fruit so that it will produce more fruit." He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit. And every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes so that it be even more fruitful. I don't think you heard me the first time, so I had to say it again. Sometimes the cutting and pruning isn't about discipline, but about development. We can think of it like gardening, right? And I don't know if you garden, Muffin, but even the branches producing fruit, the good areas of your life, God prunes those too. God doesn't prune it because you're failing. He prunes because you're growing. He prunes because he sees the version of you you haven't become yet. He sees the rooms he's about to send you into, the doors that are opening, the calling that requires a lighter load and fewer attachments. He knows that who you're becoming cannot carry who you used to be. And pruning hurts. It feels like loss. It feels like subtraction. But pruning is protection. When God removes someone or something from your life, it's not because you're being abandoned. God is taking you, he's taking something from you. He's making room for what he promised you. He sees what's ahead, and he knows what can't go with you. God says, you're too connected to what drains you. So he cuts. And while we call it loss, God calls it pruning. So instead of asking, why did they leave? Try asking, God, what are you making space for? Instead of asking, well, why can't they come with me? Ask God, what version of me is God building? Because here's the truth. You're stepping into rooms your old connections don't have the capacity to survive in. And yes, it hurts. It hurts. Losing people hurts. But losing your peace hurts more. We ask God for peace, but we don't realize peace requires subtraction. We ask God for clarity, but clarity requires quiet. We ask God for purpose, but purpose requires separation. Some of you listening right now are not failing. You're just being filtered. God is filtering out. God is filtering out the distractions. God is filtering out the emotional leeches. God is filtering out the spiritually stagnant connections. God is filtering out people who only like the version of you they can benefit from. God is removing what's draining you so you can grow where he's taking you. You know, when we talk about learning to love our own company, I can't help but to think of David. Before David was king, before anyone was singing his praises or calling his name, David was just a shepherd. David was a shepherd alone in the fields with his sheep, his harp, and God. He didn't have followers or validation or someone texting him good morning or nothing like that. He had solitude and God. And that's where he learned who he was. And that's where he learned who God was. In that quiet, David learned something so powerful. He learned that being alone doesn't mean you're abandoned. I don't know how many times I have to say that. You're being developed. In Psalm 23, David writes, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." Think about that. David wasn't saying that from a throne, y'all. He said that from a place of solitude, a place where there weren't people cheering him on or telling him he mattered. It was quiet. It was him and God. And somehow he found peace there. He found identity there. David's alone time wasn't wasted. It was where he wrote some of his most honest prayers. It's where he wrestled with doubt and poured his heart out. He went from saying, "Why are you downcast, O my soul?" to, "Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life." And that's growth if I've ever seen it. And it happened in solitude. So, Muffin, maybe your alone time right now is actually your shepherd's field. Your quiet place where God is preparing you for what's next. If so, please don't rush out of it. Just rest in it. Your alone season is not a punishment, it's preparation. You know, Psalm 139, 13 through 14 says, 13 through 14 says, "For it was you who created my inward parts. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I will praise you because I have been remarkably and wondrously made." That means every part of you, your personality, your quirks, your smile, even the way your mind works was intentional. You were designed, not duplicated. And if the creator of the entire universe handcrafted you with that kind of care and detail, then being alone with yourself shouldn't feel like punishment. It should feel like worship. The same God who created the heavens and earth, the trees, the sunrises, the sunsets, all these beautiful things that you admire, created you too. He thought the world needed one of you too. Because spending time with yourself is really spending time with God's creation. You're looking at his handiwork up close. And when you start to see yourself through that lens, it changes how you talk to yourself, how you treat yourself, and even how you allow others to treat you. And then that's where Matthew 22, 37 through 39 comes in, where Jesus says, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and love your neighbor as you love yourself." We quote that verse all the time, but think about that last part as yourself, right? You can't pour love out to others from a heart that doesn't know what love feels like on the inside. You can't love others well if you don't even know how to love or value yourself. That's why solitude matters. It gives God space to teach you who you are so you can show up in relationships whole and not half empty. And then there's 1 Corinthians 13, verses 4 through 7, the famous love verse, right? Where it says, "Love is patient, love is kind, it doesn't boast or envy, it keeps no record of wrongs." But what if we turned that inward for a second? What if we practiced that kind of love with ourselves? What if you were patient with your process, kind to your body? What if you were gentle with your mistakes and forgiving toward the version of you that's still healing? What if you stopped keeping record of your own wrongs, the things you wish you'd done differently, and instead looked at yourself through the same grace you extend to everyone else? Because here's the truth. Before you can date someone else, you have to know what it's like to date you. Not the filtered, put together you, but the you that God calls fearfully and wonderfully made. That's the version he loves. And that's the version he wants you to learn to love too. Society tells us, don't slow down. Always be reachable. Society tells us if you're alone, you're failing. Society tells us if you're alone, if you're not posting, you're irrelevant. But God says the opposite. Last week we talked about Psalm 46:10 that says, "Be still and know that I am God." Solitude isn't God taking you away from something. It's God pulling you closer to him. Stillness. Let me tell you why solitude is a spiritual strategy. Okay, so here. Jesus, the most perfect man, withdrew often. And he wasn't escaping people. He was protecting his connection to the Father. We think, if I'm alone, something's got to be wrong. But Jesus shows us, if I'm never alone, something's wrong. Solitude is not the absence of people. It is the presence of God. Now let's talk about what to do in that solitude. We all love practical steps because The goal isn't to sit in a quiet room staring at a wall like, okay, God, anytime now, say something. No. Solitude is active. Solitude is building. Solitude is becoming. Solitude is discovering. Now I want y'all to write this down, okay? I want you guys to write this down. So the first practical step, I want you to shift your perspective. Ask not, why is this happening to me? But what is this doing in me? God, reveal what you're pruning. Show me what you're trying to grow. 2, stop romanticizing people who were seasonal. This one hurts, let's be real. When we're lonely, we start to remember the good parts of people God removed. But God isn't calling you to go backwards. He's calling you forward. And every time you reach back out to what God removed, you're reattaching a branch that He already cut. You say it loud if you need to. I refuse to return to what God has already rescued me from. 3, I want you to build a routine with God, not around Him. Don't squeeze Him into your schedule. Build your day from Him. Start your morning like, God, what needs pruning today? Who do I need to release? What do I need to stop chasing? When God becomes your foundation, everything else becomes optional. 4, don't confuse familiar with fruitful. Just because it feels familiar doesn't mean it's still fruitful. Some of us are holding on to relationships because, well, we've known each other forever. They were there for me one time. I don't want to start over. But longevity doesn't equal loyalty. And history doesn't mean destiny. If the connection costs your peace, it costs too much. You can miss them. You can love them. You can wish them well. And still accept that their part in your story is over. Feel it, but don't stay in it. And 5, I want you to practice stillness without feeling guilty. You don't always have to be productive or be busy or be available, be responsive. Sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is rest. Rest is worship. Rest is trust. Rest says, God, while I pause, you still move. Last week we said that God does His best work in quiet places. Let's think about the womb. The womb is quiet. The seed grows underground in silence. Jesus resurrected before dawn in silence. Your solitude is not punishment. Your solitude is proof. Proof that God is preparing you for something too big to bring everyone with you. Proof that something new is being developed. Proof that you're growing. I know that I needed solitude so I could finally hear God louder than I heard people. If God is pruning, it means He sees fruit in you that you don't even see yet. And sometimes the cutting is proof of calling. I'm going to get a little bit vulnerable here. Last year, toward the end of the year, I went through what I now realize was a season of solitude. And, we talked a little bit about this last episode. But at the time, it just felt like everything was falling apart. Like every area of my life that felt safe or predictable was being stripped away. I remember sitting in a room one night just asking God, what are you doing? What are you doing? Why does it feel like you're taking everything and everyone away from me? And it wasn't loud or dramatic, but in that moment, in that still moment, I could just feel him whisper back, I'm not taking things from you. I'm making room. And that hit me so hard. It hit me so hard because when you're in that pruning season, it doesn't feel like room is being made. It feels like lost. But looking back, I can see now that he was preparing me for the season I'm in today. I started losing those bad fruits: impatience, comparison, self doubt. All the things that made me second guess what God had already said about me. And it wasn't overnight. It was a process. As you all know, I told you, last episode. Um, but he was teaching me that solitude was protection. That quiet season where that quiet season was where he rebuilt me. And it was where I learned to be still and actually hear him. I started back writing lyrics to songs, just pouring my thoughts and emotions out line by line. And it became this way for me to talk to God through creativity. And the wild part, y'all, during that time, people were asking me to go out, hang out, whatever the case. And it was because they knew I was leaving Alaska. But honestly, I felt more peace at home. Just me, the quiet, and God. And there was something about those still nights that felt sacred. Like I didn't want to trade that peace for anything. And now in this new season, the season of purpose and new beginnings, I can see how every quiet night and every unanswered question and every moment I thought God was silent was actually him working behind the scenes. He was shaping me. He was pruning me and preparing me for what he had already planned. So if you're listening right now and you're in that waiting, quiet, or in between place, don't despise it. God's doing something in that space. He's not punishing you, he's preparing you. Your sleepover challenge for this week is to go on one solo date. One solo date. And it doesn't have to be fancy. Coffee, journaling by a lake, I don't know. A cozy night in with your favorite worship playlist. Just spend time with yourself and let God meet you there. And this might be a little difficult at first, right? Because what if you're taking yourself out to eat? And FYI, drive-throughs do not count. It does not count. But yeah, you're taking yourself out to eat and you sit down and you're feeling confident. And here comes the waiter like, will somebody be joining you? And now you got to awkwardly say no. And please, please, for the life of me, I beg you, do not say, yeah, the big God, y'all, he's coming to sit with me. Do not hit that man with the actually, sir, God is here. No, we're not doing that. Just smile and drink the water. Anyway, I want you to write a short prayer before or after. Lord, teach me to love who you created me to be. Help me to see myself through your eyes. Remember, dating yourself isn't selfish, it's preparation, because when you know your worth in God, you stop settling for what doesn't honor it. That's it for tonight's sleepover muffin. Rest easy, keep yourself and your heart surrendered, and let your joy shine. And we'll see you at the next one.